Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Select Board meeting. It is Tuesday, August 11th. Our first agenda items, announcements and updates. Do any members have announcements or updates to make? All right.
Just real quick.
Go ahead.
I just want to thank everyone who came out and participated at the police department for hosting all the other departments and community groups that came out for National Night Out on the 4th. It was a great event. Really great to see a lot of people out there. I ran the bike obstacle course in my suit. It was really a lot of fun.
And we have pictures.
There are pictures. But the whole event was really lovely, and it's just great to see the whole community out there and supporting one another and having a great time. So thank you to everyone who made that possible and for everyone who attended.
All right. Next agenda item is appointment of Veteran Services Director. Introduction and appointment of Veteran Services Director Sue Ann Chung.
Dr. Klaczynski, John will introduce.
Thank you, Chair, members of the Select Board, members of the community. As Chaz said, John Klaczynski, Director of Public Health and Human Services. I am pleased to be here with you all tonight to formally introduce Brookline's new Veteran Services Director, Sue Ann Chung. While our Veteran Services Department operates under the umbrella of Health and Human Services, its standalone designation reflects our commitment to fulfilling statutory duties under Chapter 115 and making sure that we deliver dedicated support and benefits for all of Brookline's veterans. Sue comes to us with an exceptional background. She is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who previously served as the Veterans Services Officer for the town of Saugus, and also as the outreach coordinator on the Commonwealth's SAVE team for the Executive Office of Veteran Services. In addition to her knowledge of state and federal benefit programs, Sue holds a degree in psychology and brings extensive human services experience and training. Her dedication goes far beyond what she does during the 8 to 5 for us here in Brookline. She's constantly thinking about and working with and supporting veterans outside the community as well. We're really excited to have her as part of the team and heading up Veteran Services Department. And with that, I'd like to invite Sue Chung up to the microphone.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, John. Hello, everybody. My name is Sue Ann Chung again. Thank you, John, for that. I'm very excited to join Town of Brookline as the Director of Veteran Services, and I can't wait to work with all the veterans in the community and learn what the needs and the priorities are. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome aboard. All right. With that, we will move to public comment.
Could we ask that you just take a formal vote?
Okay. So
ratify the appointment. Sorry. Thank you.
All right. So I move appointment of Veteran Services Director. I move appointment of Sue Ann Chung to be Veteran Services Director.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Amanda.
Yes.
Anthony.
Yes.
And I also vote yes. All right. Officially welcome aboard. Congratulations. With that, we will now move to public comment. Has anyone signed up in advance?
Yes, we have 2 people signed up in advance.
All right. Would you like to review the rules?
Sure. Thank you for joining us for public comment. This is an opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues in Brookline that matter to you. Each person speaking tonight is limited to 3 minutes. You don't need to use the entire time, but you may if you like. Once 15 minutes has been met, there is an opportunity at the conclusion of the Select Board's business for additional comments. Members of the public sometimes raise questions during public comment. We may be able to provide a quick answer to a question, but are more likely to work with staff to get a more thorough answer and respond over email. The on-screen timer will flash orange when you have 60 seconds remaining and red when your time is nearly up. Please conclude your remarks at that time. If you have more to say, you're welcome to send an email to board members expressing your thoughts in greater detail. Any person wishing to speak must begin their comment by identifying themselves with their full name, either their Brookline precinct number or street address, and the specific topic on which they wish to speak. The board encourages but does not require that remote users turn their video on when commenting. Our first person signed up is Regina Frawley.
Thank you. I do realize this is summertime. I understand that, and I'm being very patient, but I'm running into a difficulty on my end. I spoke several weeks ago about the survey, land survey marks on in front of my house on the left side that was removed during the repairs, and I cannot put the privacy fence up without it. And I can't, because it goes at a very bit strange angle, which the original platting back in the late 20s somehow didn't add in an arc. I've already paid $2,700 for it. That's the left side has been removed. The granite marker that every so often every street has at the top of my driveway on the right side has never been replaced. They went around it, and they left room for it, but it's never been replaced with the hole in the middle that also is how they use for surveys. Anyway, I need to upgrade my porch, which is falling down, and put a privacy fence up, and I'm waiting on that survey that the town should be providing now on my left side. I should not have to pay again for that survey. So somebody was supposed to get back to me, and they never did. Thank you.
All right, who's our next speaker?
Janice Kahn.
Janice Kahn, town meeting member from Precinct 15. And I'm here really to thank you for item 4K, which is awarding the contract for the Hammond Woodland traffic signal. And I just want to present a little bit of the history. This is for me, a 20-year journey. It finally made it into the fiscal 2021 financial plan to be put in fiscal year 2025, which it didn't quite make. So the property tax, this is a property tax funded project. Its installation was delayed for numerous reasons, one of which was COVID, when such projects were pulled from the CIP. And then it was incorporated into a broader project, which was to facilitate the building of the Hammond Street Greenway, to create a bike lane on Hammond Street. And then finally, it was delayed again because of utility work that needed to be done first, which of course makes a lot of sense. This is a big project for the neighborhood. So the crash data has been there for a long time. From 2010 to 2015, there were 20 reported incidents. There have been serious injuries there, pedestrians, bicyclists, and cars. And this is sort of the culmination of a long project that was approved by town meeting a long time ago. So my first journey was with a former transportation administrator, David Friend, who met with us in 2007 and came up with a plan for this traffic light, this traffic signal. So I just am delighted that it's finally looks like it's going to go in. It's a major safety issue for the neighborhood. So I thought it was worth coming in person to thank you.
Would anyone else like to participate in public comment? Anyone in the room? Anybody online?
There's no hands raised online.
All right, then we'll move on. Our next,
David,
yes.
can I just say thank you, Janice, for thanking us. We don't often get that type of response.
All right, so our next agenda item is miscellaneous. First, I will specifically address 4A, which is announcement pertaining to the review of the board's executive session meeting minutes from January 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2026 for purposes of disclosure. I move that we release the executive session minutes for the dates of January 13th, January 27th, February 10th, February 17th, and March 10th of 2026, and that we withhold the executive session minutes of March 24th, April 7th, April 14th, May 19th, and June 30th of 2026.
I just want to confirm that we actually take a vote here as opposed to an announcement.
I believe it's an announcement. You don't even need to vote this.
Is this an announcement?
Yep.
Okay.
You do need to vote the minutes of 4B separately.
All right. I move that we approve the meeting minutes from July 28th, 2026, subject to the revisions of Michael.
Yes.
Bernard votes yes. Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Now, regarding items 4C through 4R, would anyone like to hold any of these items for further discussion or from the omnibus vote?
Can we hold 4K?
Okay. Any others? Amanda?
Not necessarily to hold, just a comment. 4Q, this was apparently the first time in 7 years, I'm going to read this very quickly, that the town has received an energy reduction grant through the Green Communities Program. And it marks an important step towards reducing the town's energy use and greenhouse gas emissions aligned with the CARP. So I'm just wanted to recognize that this is an important step along those lines, and very happy of staff putting through to get grant funding to do so.
Excellent.
And I do just want to flag with 4F, the Elliott Recreation Center renovation project, we're waiting for one final form from the contractor, so this approval would be contingent on the contractor submitting that form.
All right, so why don't we address item 4K? And this is the item that Janice Kahn was complimenting us over.
Yeah, I just wanted to, can I get a full rundown of exactly what's being done on this corridor? Is it complete repaving of the whole area, or?
I think Dan Murphy is in the audience here. Chuck, if it's okay with you.
Yes.
As Janice said, Dan Murphy, Director of Engineering and Transportation. As Janice said, there's a long...
Can you?
What?
Lift that.
More? Okay, sorry. Dan Murphy, Director of Engineering and Transportation. As Janice said, it's got a long history. It's long been on the docket, and we basically took, it was going to be a bonded wearing course job when I first got here, which is a thin overlay. And basically, we were talking with the utility, there were some leaks, and so they needed to do some fixing, and we worked very closely with them to make sure, are you sure you've got everything done? And then they recognized they needed to do some additional replacement. So they did all that, and we're finally here. But we took the original bonded wearing course and the signal, and we put them all together. And the condition of the road was borderline for the overlay. So with a couple of years passing, we made we looked at it again and made the decision that it was better served with a mill and overlay. So that's the plan for the whole road. But then the signal work will come as well. So we're happy to get bids in. We've got Jay Marchese, who's a well-known and good contractor, excited to have. So the work will start this fall, but the paving will come next year. But they'll be working on the signal. We did take the opportunity with the mill and overlay to add some berm, because with a thin overlay, you wouldn't normally do that. But because we're doing the full mill and overlay, there's sections that had berm a long time ago. But we've added that. We've added some granite curb in some places, and looking forward to getting the job
Great,
going.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Would you still like to vote on 4K separately?
No, I'm good.
All right. So I move approval of items 4C through 4R. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. With that, we move to boards and commissions interviews. So first up, for Police Commissioners Advisory Committee, we have applicant Nick Fetzer. Before Nick starts, I think the usual question, how many openings, how many applicants?
There is one vacancy, so he could fill that vacancy. There are 2 members up for reappointment, and 1 member has reapplied for that reappointment.
All right.
But there is currently 1 vacancy.
Okay, and just 1 applicant?
Yes.
All right. Go ahead, come right up.
Good evening, Select Board members, Brookline neighbors and friends. My name is Nick Fetzer. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 16.
All right, would you like to tell us about your interest in Police Commissioners Advisory Committee, what prompted you to apply, and a little bit about your background and why you think you would be a good fit for it?
Sure, I appreciate that. Just a brief on my background. I was a military brat. My dad served his entire career as a U.S. Marine Corps helicopter pilot. So I grew up all over the place. Moved to Brookline about a year ago. But prior to my time in Brookline, I worked at the Virginia Commonwealth University for about 11 years. And during that time, as you're well aware, the Black Lives Matter and George Floyd protests happened, and Richmond was kind of a flashpoint during those protests. And as a result, VCU established a institution-wide committee to decide how the institution should respond. And I served on that committee, and one of the things that came out of that committee's decision-making was to form a community oversight committee with the VCU Police Department. And that committee's responsibilities were to review every single use of force incident that occurred with VCU police officers while they were on patrol. I served on that committee as well, the first iteration of that committee. So every quarter we would meet and review all body cam footage, and all reports submitted by police officers and individuals involved in those incidents would make recommendations to the police department on policy changes or tweaks that might be advisable considering the things that we saw, and then we would make report outs to the VCU community. I think one of the most interesting parts about this committee, and actually VCU PD in general, is that its jurisdiction stretched beyond the institution's borders into the Richmond city itself. And so the members of that committee were not just VCU's faculty and staff and students, of course there were those, but also community members from the city of Richmond as well. I thought it was a really excellent structure for partnership between the community and the police department. And during my time at VCU, I just thought it was one of the most impactful things I did. And so when I moved here to Brookline and saw that there was an opportunity to participate in a similar way, I really was encouraged to try.
All right. Any other questions? Okay.
So-
Well, go ahead, Bernard.
Okay. Other than the fact that your father's in the military, as was my father, and participation on the committee, what in your background sort of is relevant to the PCAC, given what it does? And I assume you've reviewed the actions of the PCAC.
Yes, absolutely. Well, my academic background is entirely in political philosophy and public policy analysis, and so it's been a driving force in my life to study those things and think about those things. It's one of the things that prompted me to run for a town meeting when I moved here right away, because those kinds of decisions, how those kinds of organizations operate, their interactions with the community, I think are critical. And I think this is a really important time here in the United States. We're seeing some blowback from a lot of different ways that those organizations are interacting with the community. And so I'd really like to be a part of those discussions, and I hope to bring thoughtful and earnest consideration to a committee like that.
Have you attended any of the meetings of the PCAC?
No, I haven't, not yet.
Else? Amanda?
So as a new town meeting member, you know that we just tasked the PCAC with a lot of work coming up. And so would love to hear a little bit about how you think about tackling what are complex issues where there are members of the community that feel strongly in all directions, so to speak.
Sure. I think those issues really take time and deliberation, right? And so I think the important thing is to make sure that we have a process that allows people to express their opinions, and that the committee takes in those opinions and is communicative with the community when any decisions that are made with the police department, right? So those things just take time, they take transparency, and they take good communication. There's really no shortcuts around those kind of issues. There's always going to be flashpoints. I think if you bring your why, and you bring evidence to support why the decision went the way that it did, not everyone's going to agree with you. But I think so long as your process is sound, you should be able to look people in the eye and say, we took in this amount of data, we heard what you had to say, we made a decision based on these things, and then you hope that the decision is sound, and as you move forward, the community understands that and sees the benefit of the decision-making process.
Thank you.
Michael?
Following up on the last question, I'm wondering if, in your experience in VCU and the committee work that you did there, which would hopefully that experience would transfer here, can you give an example of some decision that came out of a flashpoint and how that sort of was handled and went down with the community?
I really think it happens to be that first report That was a brand new kind of communication, right? A brand new engagement between the police department and not just the VCU community, but the greater Richmond community. And so the issuance of our first report, which actually happened right after I left, but I was a part of obviously the construction of that report. I saw only in the rearview mirror, right, as after I had left. And there was a lot of reaction to just the number. I think people were really struck by the number of times that officers had to engage in some kind of use of force activity. And so that really was the biggest result of that I saw, was getting people to understand how frequently these things occur. But we also tried to report out in detail about what the committee saw in terms of whether or not those things were justified, right? So we would review the police department's assessment, right, of whether or not that was a justified interaction, and if not, what were the actions taken by the police department to make corrections, right, either further training or some kind of disciplinary action. And we tried in that report to make sure that the community understood that we reviewed those, that we either concurred or didn't concur, and that we made some recommendations on how to do those things. So the biggest flashpoint I saw was a reaction about, I think people just underestimate, right, how many interactions there are with police, and of those interactions, how many have to have some kind of use of force incident with them. I hope that communication and that the issuance of that report got to level set with the community, and I hope that the next issuances of those reports don't meet with the same kind of shocked stance, reaction from the public. But that has yet to be seen.
Anyone else? All right, well, it's possible we'll get more applicants and that there'll be more interviews, but we will certainly get back to you at a future meeting.
Understood. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, next up, we have Housing Advisory Board, and we have 2 applicants for this evening. So Melanie, if you could let us know.
Sure. There is 1 vacancy currently. There are 2 applicants for reappointment. 1 member is not renewing, so there will be 2 vacancies September 1st.
All right.
I have a question about that. The one who is not renewing, are they in sort of the category of, what is it, on the HAB resident of, because that's like not a general.
I don't believe so. I think they're both general members.
Okay.
I checked with
Roger.
staff this morning. So currently 1 vacancy with 1 pending in the future.
All right.
Somebody's not seeking reappointment.
So our first candidate to be interviewed this evening, Jeffrey Berry. Come right up.
Evening, thank you for having me here. I'm Jeff Berry, resident of Coolidge Corner, and happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Well, sort of the general question at the outset that often candidates will address is what prompted you to apply for this position? What about your personal and professional background suggests that you would be a good fit for this?
Sure. So first of all, I begin with gratitude and for living in such a great community. I love living in Brookline and Coolidge Corner, and volunteering to help guide, even to play a very small role in guiding Brookline into the future. Professionally, I'm an urbanist, so housing is part of what I studied at Tufts University. I was a professor of political science there and wrote on a lot on cities and towns. I had 2 areas of specialization I think are particularly relevant to the Housing Advisory Board. One is citizen engagement. I, with colleagues, wrote on how to best model and structure citizen engagement into public policymaking process in cities. Another was on role of 501c3 nonprofits in city politics and city life. We think of nonprofits as non-political, but it's really just the opposite. They're the voice of citizens and neighborhoods in city and town politics. And so I did a lot of work over the years in that. On a more practical level, I've been active. I was in nonprofits. I was chairman of the board of directors of the Alzheimer's Association of Massachusetts and New Hampshire. In Brookline, I was the chair of the Moderators Committee on Forms of Government, and I've been on other boards as well, and I think maybe I'll stop there rather than giving you my entire CV. So,
All right, thank you. Any questions from other members? Bernard?
Yeah, as chair of the moderated, Moderators Committee on Forms of Government, one of the options was a city form of government. How would a city form of government change the way that the HAB would operate, particularly in terms of public participation, in your view?
Public participation.
I'm
yeah.
not, saying that this is good or bad. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Just give me a
Okay,
sense of how
so
it.
the big change would be eliminating the participatory model that we have now with 250 people meeting a couple times a year. What would likely happen instead if that was eliminated was there would be more organizations on the neighborhood level that would arise to replace them. Another way of doing that are cities like St. Paul and Portland, Oregon that have neighborhood councils that are officially part of government and at the same time have a lot of autonomy. Those cities devolve their powers so that neighborhoods have a certain amount of power themselves, including over zoning, as well as having a bit of money from the city budget that they allocate themselves. So there's an imaginative ways that you can structure citizen engagement without having 250 people, which is really not grassroots democracy, it's representative democracy. So those people participate in an intense way, but I think it discourages in a way neighborhood organizations on their own because there's people there representing them already in government.
Michael?
Thank you very much for your application. The Housing Advisory Board takes up a lot of matters around inclusionary zoning and deed affordable housing. So I'm wondering if in your studies of urban politics or related matters, whether you've looked at inclusionary zoning, whether you have thoughts about the evolution of inclusionary zoning and the effectiveness of it for towns like Brookline?
Well, zoning is critical. It doesn't, affordable housing doesn't happen without zoning that facilitates it. So it's crucial. And we know that because a lot of neighborhoods don't want affordable housing in them, that we need strong government to be a counterweight to that. And the Housing Advisory Board was part of that. There's a lot of parts of Brookline government that deal with housing, so it's not the only part, but I think it plays a critical role.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Anthony.
I think the Housing Advisory Board plays a really significant advisory role to town meeting members and other members of the community looking to address certain policy concerns. One that came up recently was the home rule petition for rent control in Brookline. And I'm curious, as a member of the HAB, where your position would be on something like that.
On rent control?
Yeah.
Well, I'm against it, very firmly so. I think it discourages development, and I think it actually can discourage maintenance of units. It also, rent control is a form of subsidy, helping people who have affordability issues, but it makes the landlords pay that subsidy.
Yep.
And I think the subsidy is better coming from government if we do that. So I'm not in favor of rent control.
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Go ahead.
One of the recent actions we took at town meeting was reducing the proportion of affordable housing units inside of a new development in exchange for a larger payment into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So we reduced the amount of affordable units needed in a development they could pay into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to get around that. Is that a policy you support?
Yes, I think it gives flexibility. I think you're talking about units that have 19 or fewer units in them, and I think that it's fine. It gives the town some money that they can use creatively to build affordable housing. So I'm fine with that.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Bernard?
I agree with you on the rent control issue, but the reason why rent control has come up is that the market has failed,
Yes.
totally failed. And people are looking for answers. Do you have any thoughts on what type of answers you think make the most sense in terms of addressing the affordability issue, as well as all the issues that you mentioned, such as
If I knew how to solve the affordability issue, I wouldn't be working my day job. I'd be working, I'd be the.
well, I'm just looking for
Yeah.
ideas.
So you need to build more. The problem with building more, though, is it takes time. And we all know, you know better than any, how incremental the increase in the housing supply in Brookline has been. And it's not easy, it's not going to change dramatically. So, but I would encourage us to build more, to use creative mechanisms, hopefully public-private partnerships in ways in which we can get firms to help build units that are subsidized in a way. So there are ways, but there's no magic bullet, Mr. Green, and I regret that because my heart is with low-income people, and I wish that Brookline had more. We're building housing that's really very nice for people that can afford it. And so we as a government need to work hard to make sure that there is affordable housing here, but it's a challenge.
Is there something specific that you feel that Brookline can do on its own to help expand affordability? You talk about the importance of transit-oriented development and collaborating with various stakeholders, including developers. What types of incentives could Brookline offer that perhaps it's not offering right now to encourage that type of public-private partnership?
Well, it's a combination of zoning, and you can create financial incentives through through tax abatements and tax incentives to developers. I'm very strong, excuse me, on transit-oriented development, and in reading through the minutes and watching some meetings of the Housing Advisory Board, that didn't come up, and I was a little disappointed in that. Transit-oriented development is a chance to increase the housing supply, but also deal with environmental issues of cars. We have a housing crisis here in Massachusetts, and we're not going to build more highways. That's just not going to happen. And so as the population expands, which it is because we are building more housing in Massachusetts, as the population expands, we don't want the population of cars to expand. So here in Brookline, we have 2 trolley lines, and we need to use incentives to build more housing near those trolley lines for people to work and go into Boston and not need cars. So that's part of the affordability issue that I think transit-oriented development addresses.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next applicant for Housing Advisory Board is Leslie Reed.
She's online.
All right,
Hello, good evening.
good evening. So please go ahead and introduce yourself and what prompted you to apply, and what about your professional and personal background makes you feel ideally suited to serve on Housing Advisory Board.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to share my background and experience. I first moved to Brookline with my mom in 1978, where I lived until 1986. I had the privilege of attending Brookline Public Schools all the way through high school. 2 of my children also attended Brookline Public Schools through the medical program. And I had the privilege to return to Brookline as a resident this past September. And so I'm very happy to be here. On the professional side, I have over 30 years experience in affordable housing and community development, working for nonprofits, public agencies, and a private consulting firm. I currently work for the Massachusetts Housing Investment Corporation, where I work on investments and loans to both affordable housing and community development programs. And I currently am the chair of the Citizens Housing Action and Planning Association, CHAPA, which is a statewide housing policy advocacy organization. So it would be my privilege to bring both my lived experience as a resident of Brookline, who did experience some housing instability in my youth, together with my professional background, which includes policy and finance, in service of the Housing Advisory Board's important mission in deploying resources towards expanding the supply of housing equitably and differently.
All right, any questions from members? Amanda?
So as someone who has a lot of experience from multiple aspects on affordable housing, I'm wondering if you can give your insights into what you think are some of the bigger challenges in the current times of either building new housing, new subsidized housing in Brookline, and or maintaining some of the existing affordable housing that we have.
I think a key theme that we're all familiar with at this point is affordability, but that includes on the cost side. We are currently facing, interest rates that are the highest they've been in a decade. The impacts of inflation on building costs, in addition to federal requirements that are increasing the cost of development. And so, and resources haven't necessarily expanded proportional to those increase in the cost to produce housing. And so I think we're challenged with how to do more with the same amount of money and higher costs. And I think the key is prioritizing impact and how to deal with cost effectiveness. The truth of the matter is, Brookline is an extraordinarily expensive place to build housing, and the affordable housing resources available may not be adequate to foster all of the production that might be desired. I think there are companion strategies. My policy mantra has long been, we have to do all the things. So things like down payment assistance and rental subsidies can sometimes make scarce dollars serve the same people when production is limited by the high cost of development.
Bernard?
Yeah. Among the discussions that we have at the HAB is a discussion of how do we preserve and expand our middle-income families here in Brookline, middle-income housing. Particularly, how do we expand opportunities for middle-income Black and Hispanic families here in Brookline? I see that you have lots of experience in some of the affordable housing tools that are out there, including the low-income housing tax credit. Do you have any thoughts on how the low-income housing tax credit can be used for middle-income housing? If we have an opportunity to develop a project, I mean, you do have the opportunity to go up to middle income level with the low income housing tax credit. How would you use that, or what should we think about doing with respect to using that tool?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's part of how do you define middle income? The low income housing tax credit program serves people earning from 0 to 80% of the area median income. That can be households earning up to over $100,000 a year at 80% AMI. The tax credit program was recently modified to allow for what we call income mixing, which allows us to include 80% AMI units in new tax credit development. In addition, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has a middle income subsidy program that provides capital subsidies to support the development of moderate or middle income units that aren't supported by the low income housing tax credit program. So I think there's an opportunity when there's development to think strategically about the income mix and how town resources can be used to achieve a desired mix if there is enough support to include what you're calling middle income units. I think there are tools that can be brought to bear to ensure the broadest range possible are served by, the kind of development that's traditionally built using things like low-income housing tax credits. But I often say low-income housing tax credit housing is mixed-income housing when you have people earning between $0 and over $100,000 a year eligible to live in those developments. And so I think there is an opportunity, and I admire a lot the work that the Housing Authority has done in redeveloping their own portfolio of existing housing, taking the opportunity to add new affordable housing units. And that is a potential opportunity to collaborate with them, where they're leveraging significant federal resources as well to support that kind of development, where you get, again, that leverage and more bang for your buck, and including 80% AMI units or state-assisted moderate income units. That's an example of where there is an existing pipeline of opportunities that, with some collaboration, if there's a real interest in introducing a broader income range, that discussion could be had.
Anyone else? Anthony?
I'd like to just ask a similar question to what I asked the previous applicant about rent control, and then reducing the requirement for inclusionary zoning in lieu of a payment to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Where do you see both of those things in your housing strategy?
For me personally, I believe regulation is required to maximize equitable opportunities for housing access. I do not believe the content of the recent ballot initiative was the best approach to that. And there is compromises on rent stabilization that could provide some additional support to existing residents without stifling development and the kinds of returns that investors and owners need in order to maintain properties. So again, in my role at CHAPA, we had actually started to formulate some compromise language that might have addressed some of the key obstacles that the kind of flawed ballot initiative presented. And at the very least, I think it's a really important dialogue for us to have about what kind of regulation we want to institute that helps us to get the housing mix that we want and need in our communities. So, I think we're done for 2 years, give or take, with the failure of the past ballot initiative. It can't come back for another 2 years. I don't see the legislature having any particular appetite in taking it up. And in the meantime, I think we could take that opportunity to explore the circumstances under which some form of rent stabilization could benefit people who need assistance with housing stability without stifling development or preventing good maintenance and recapitalization of existing properties. And I'd be excited to have a conversation about what that might look like for the town of Brookline, potentially. On inclusionary zoning, I had the privilege to be part of the development of the policy in the city of Boston and utilized it as a developer with 2 different nonprofit affordable housing developers. And my observation is that it needs to be a carefully calibrated, pragmatic balance. And the thing, I think it's really critical that new development include some income restricted units. And I think inclusionary development policy should have the flexibility built in to have varying levels of requirements depending on the market condition. So, for example, with low interest rates and low inflation, a higher percentage of inclusionary units may be appropriate. A different level of affordability may be appropriate in a high interest rate, high inflation environment in order to not stifle development. So I would like to see more flexibility built into inclusionary development policies so that it can be more responsive to the realities of market conditions and something more like real time.
Perfect. Thanks.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very much for your interview. You will hear back from us at a future meeting.
Thank you so much.
All right, next we have interviews for Brookline Commission on Disability. Kyron Bhatia has withdrawn his application, so we will just be interviewing Kaylee Bennett.
Hi, thank you so much for having me tonight, and good evening. My name is Kaylee, and I am a town meeting member for Precinct 8, as well as the chair of Brookline's Indigenous Peoples Celebration Committee.
All right, why don't you tell us a bit more about yourself, why you are interested in Brookline Commission on Disability, and what it is about your professional and personal backgrounds that would lend themselves well to you serving on this body.
So first and foremost, I am a person with a disability. I am epileptic. And I think it's important to say that and to start with that, because when I was younger, I would have never in a room of people said that out loud. And so for me, coming to where I am now, it is important that I am able to advocate for myself and for persons with disability, and also course correct stigma regarding disability, specifically epilepsy, is something that to this day is still wildly stigmatized. And so it's very important to me to be an advocate for that. As for everything else, I spoke about accessibility for my survey for town meeting. And on election day, I met a Precinct 8 constituent who was very excited to meet me. We spoke for about 20 minutes. And she came specifically to vote for me because I'd spoke about access in this survey. And she was an elderly neighbor, and she walks with a walker. And she had me take her walker and put it on the sidewalk and try to push it. And as soon as it came to a bump, of which it was, right there, she wanted me to see and experience for myself what it is like walking around Brookline with a walker. And it is actually, for me, it was quite challenging, because as soon as there's a little bit of a divot in the ground, the walker stops. And so I was so appreciative that she took the time to meet with me. And again, we chatted for a bit of time, but the thing that she spoke to me specifically about was the importance of sidewalk improvements, which I know this commission is actively working on, and I've seen that work both reflected in their minutes as well as the meeting that I attended. Professionally, I work in two fields. I work primarily as a production manager for theater, as well as a large-scale event planner in higher education. And so with that, I do a fair amount of event planning. I think that that's something that all commissions potentially could benefit from, of just having more interface with the public. In my work in higher education, or in general, even with the IPCC, I have planned events for anywhere from 10 to 2,000 attendees. So a fair amount of experience with that. And also in each of these fields, I have had to advocate for accessibility needs. In higher education, we had an individual in our community who has a severe heart condition, and they needed a defibrillator, which there used to be one in my building, but now there was not. So getting through a lot of red tape to have specifically a defibrillator in our office, because the person's heart condition is such that they essentially need one in every room that they're in. And in theater, so theater has a lot of accessibility aspects in terms of making sure that performances are accessible in the way that they need to be. And often as a production manager, that's kind of, it was my job to help find solutions, compromises. Sometimes some aspect or needs of a production were not able to accommodate accessibility, or figuring out how to accommodate accessibility in a way that made every single person working on a production as well as audience members and making sure that they are supported.
All right, any questions? Bernard?
Your proposal, thank you for your application, by the way, Kelly. Your proposal for a book club and community conversations that you use in the Indigenous Peoples Celebration Committee aligns itself with the mission of the Disabilities Commission, but I don't think that that is a part of its current programming.
Mm-hmm.
How would you, or what ideas do you have for incorporating those type of programming into the Commission's activities?
Yeah, I believe earlier this year, the commission hosted an author who I think is from Western Mass, who's blind. I am forgetting his name, but they had him come to speak. So I think more events like that are engaging with the town and the public more broadly, that are looking at the lived experiences of persons with disabilities. So, I mean, that can look like a lot of different things, but I think that event that they did this year is an excellent example and something that could continue. And I think for me, that kind of goes in line with this idea of community conversations, and that could also just be an opportunity for in people to talk and express on a more like commission level what they think are important accessibility needs for the town that aren't being met. Like my neighbor who had me push her walker.
Michael?
Thank you also for your application. I'm curious, given that the challenge of sidewalks is, I'll say that you're not the first person to raise that concern, and it's, I know that our DPW staff is doing yeoman's work in order to make progress there. I'm wondering what other aspects of our infrastructure, whether it's, the public way or parks and open spaces or whatever other aspects of infrastructure would benefit from a renewed consideration of accessibility concerns.
Mm-hmm. One more thing on sidewalks, which is to say, there is a lot. I've seen it in person. I lived on Fuller Street for 11 years, and Fuller and Center and Winchester are actually, I think, some of the worst examples of sidewalks. And I think one thing that we pit against itself for whatever reason with regards to access is age. And I find that frustrating because any person can become disabled in the blink of an eye. And so for me, in 2023, I fell down a flight of stairs. It's very exciting. I severely injured myself. And so navigating Brookline was almost impossible for me, and also very scary as someone who was concerned about the sidewalks and what that would mean if I would slip and fall again. So with that in mind, one of the things that, I could barely walk. Just even getting to my office each day was extremely challenging, as well as I couldn't carry my own groceries. I could not make it from Fuller Street to Trader Joe's. So it had an enormous impact on my life. And there were things that I had to do in order to get to my job or anywhere else, which was I had to use rideshare. And that is a point of contention in terms of how Ubers, Lyfts, delivery trucks, etc., can navigate with safe bike lanes, and figuring out a better way to create infrastructure there. And I know bike lanes and bike safety is extremely important. I also bike to work occasionally, and finding a solution for that, or prioritizing a solution for that, I think would really help, because at least in the conversations I've heard, we're often pitting public transportation, walkability against parking infrastructure or any kind of infrastructure that would support people who are trying to come to our business districts and don't necessarily have a safe way to get there. Because also in Uber stopping on the side of Harvard, where they're opening a door into a bike lane, that doesn't benefit anyone, not the pedestrian or the bicyclist, or even the driver.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, well, thank you very much for your interview, and you will hear back from us at a future meeting.
Thank you.
All right, so our next agenda item.
Wait, hold on.
Yes,
You know the number of openings on that committee.
okay.
There's one vacancy. We have Kaylee as an applicant. We also have Inga who applied. So there's 2 applicants for 1 vacancy.
All right, thank you. All right, now we will go to the next agenda item, Gateway East Bus Lane Pilot. An update on the Transportation Board's vote to remove the eastbound bus lane, retain the westbound bus lane, and the segment between Station Street and Route 9. So who will go over this for us?
I believe the transportation team is online.
Good evening. This is Erin Chute, Commissioner of Public Works. We have Dan Martin here this evening. He is our sustainable transportation engineer. He will review the pilot, the findings, the presentation to the Transportation Board and decisions, and then we'll be able to field any questions. So I'll turn it over to him.
I don't see Dan online.
I don't see him online. Try and pull him up here.
Daniel Martin. And he does have a brief presentation deck.
Okay. Still don't see him. Can we try and ping him?
Okay. Yeah, let me see what I can do, and we'll get back shortly.
Okay. Maybe if it's all right with you, we move on to item 8 while we
Okay,
try and
so
figure this out.
why don't we take item 8 then, and then we'll go back to item 7. So item 8 is the exigent statement ratification policy, review of policy regarding statements and letters of support requiring signatures before the next scheduled select board meeting.
Sure. Thank you. This, as you know, over the last 2 years in particular, there have been a number of situations where the town has been asked to express support for something or issue a statement or sign on to a letter or any number of things, often regarding policy at the federal level that impacts what goes on in the state, and often on a very short turnaround. And while this has been happening, we have had an informal policy designed to ensure that the select board is, as the chief executive body and the policy setting body, has final say over the town's policies and rules, but allows it to be nimble enough to sign on to these things before your next meeting in the event that there's a deadline that can't be met. And most recently, we received a request from Boston to sign a letter to the Senate regarding temporary protected status, the ending of temporary protected status for folks who are here from Haiti. That request came in prior to another meeting, and so I followed what's our standard procedure, which is I emailed all of the board members individually, attaching a copy of the letter saying I've received this request for the town to sign on. If you have no objection, I can sign it administratively on behalf of the town, and then we can come back to the board to be ratified, which it was as part of the miscellaneous agenda here. If any one person objects for any reason or is concerns, that's totally fine. What I would just then say to the other board members is, we're not going to, we won't sign this now, but we'll bring it to you for your consideration at your next meeting. I don't say to folks, here's why. I certainly don't say who is objecting. All of that could potentially constitute deliberation that could violate the open meeting law. And so in this way, if there are things that comport with your standing policies that you feel comfortable with the town signing on to and then ratifying at your next meeting so that you can then, especially if it's something that you want to call attention to or have the community focus on, we can have it highlighted in the agenda. But that just allows you to be a little bit more nimble when it comes to signing these things. And then obviously if there's any concerns, then we don't do that, and that's totally fine. So I received a request from a board member to just codify this policy, put it in writing so that folks understand how it works, what goes on. And we provide clarity to the community on if a letter goes out that has the town of Brookline on it, that it went through this process. I did just want to clarify that this is distinct from some of the things that we do as staff members. So, if we speak at a conference, if we, one of the things that I do on a regular basis is I talk to I serve on the, as part of the Metro Mayors Coalition. There's a form letter sent every year from the Metro Mayors Coalition on behalf of all 18 communities that just list, very generic legislative priorities every year. It's non-controversial. It's always things that, even though they may not have a particular impact on our community, like subsidies for heat payments and, things that can impact communities that have more opiate abuse and remedy there. We just, as a matter of course, the communities sign on as a body to the basic legislative priorities of the body. Those things in our capacity, or as members of the Massachusetts Municipal Association, those are small scale things. But of course, even there, we're governed by the principles of the International City Managers Association, which means we don't sign on to anything that would contradict any statement or policy of the town, and we certainly don't do anything that brings the town into disrepute or backtalks, town policy. So in all of those situations, we are mindful of the fact that the select board is the body accountable to the people, and so it's really important that the select board be setting the tone and the policy of the community, and that we on staff serve as implementers of that policy, administrative spokespeople, but not the people setting the policy of the community.
All right, Bernard?
Yeah, I have one small suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
This comes up in situations other than immigration, and I think that we should just make it clear that we're talking about more than just immigration. So the parenthetical, we could just add, environmental policy statements,
Yes.
for example.
Yep.
Which is something that's come up in the past, and make it clear that these are just examples.
Absolutely.
I think that would make me a little more comfortable.
Okay.
So.
Absolutely. So at the end of that first paragraph, I'll make reference to environmental, statements of environmental policy.
Right. And at the beginning, say something like, for example.
Got it.
Right, you could do an E.g.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael?
Two things. First of all, obviously there are the political concerns and the legal concerns, and I appreciate that you've addressed them both. I'm wondering if anybody from the council's office has either reviewed this or provided any sort of opinion
Yes.
on this policy with regard to open meeting law or any other state regulations.
Yes. So Joe Callanan, town council, who is currently on vacation, and I wish him well, reviewed this document before it went into the packet. He asked me to emphasize that point to you, that if there is a disagreement or a board member wants to hold it, that I not explain who it is or the reason why. He wanted that to have particular emphasis because that could constitute deliberation. But otherwise, he said this is a great way to strike that balance between maintaining our requirements under the open meeting law, but being able to act a little more nimbly in the event that there's something exigent.
Okay. And my second question is, given that this is a new policy of the town, if somebody is interested in understanding this policy or other related policies, where would they go on the town website?
That's a great question. Right now, the town's website, the policies are in many different places. Select board policies are on the select board page. Health policies are on the health page. It varies. What we are now doing, and Michael, you've actually been, your initial scrape of this was very helpful to us. We are compiling all of the town's policy-related documents into a central space in our document center, and we are going to create a centralized location for that so that people can not only access all of them in a one-stop shop, they can search them, and it will be easier for them to find what they're looking for. So for now, this will live on the select board page, but in time, hopefully a short amount of time, concurrently with some of this work that we're doing on building out the 2030 roadmap website, we are going to have a centralized page for policies and procedures that will be searchable, that people can use.
And I assume there'll be a link on the webpage.
Yes.
Because frankly, that site that you referred to is not easy.
No, the back end of Document Center is not intuitive.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is build a front end. The good thing about Document Center, which I didn't know, which the team explained to me recently, is that when you have a document uploaded in there, you can then have it promulgated across different parts of the website, and it all goes back to the same document. So you don't have 5 different versions of the same document floating around out there, and you don't have to update it 5 different times. So using that as the back end, but then building out the front end to be more user friendly is what we're looking at.
All right, now, are you looking for us to take a vote on this?
I think this just codifies our existing procedure. So I'm happy to post it and make sure that it is publicly available and easy to access.
All right, any further discussion on this policy? Seeing none, are we ready with Dan Martin?
Yes.
All right, then let's move back to Gateway East Bus Lane Pilot.
Sorry, had a little technical difficulty, but I am available. And let me share my screen. I have a short presentation to show you. Okay, so it should be live now. I'm Dan Martin from the Brookline DPW Engineering Transportation Department. And I also have our partner from the MBTA. We have Eileen Vody here. The Gateway East pilot, I'll give you a little history on it and the timeline, and then some pilot takeaways, and then conclusions and the next steps. The pilot was a collaborative effort between the MBTA, Mass Department of Transportation, and the town of Brookline to build on the 2021 corridor reconstruction. So the Gateway East area had been reconstructed, and we were working to implement TSP, and we thought of this pilot to go along with it. And the Transportation Board, when they enacted the pilot, they gave this quote here the pilot was to prioritize safe, space-efficient, energy-efficient movement of people and goods over the movement of parking and private vehicles when designing and improving our public ways, with particular focus on high traffic routes, connectivity, and directness consistent with Brookline's town meeting almost unanimously approval of Warrant Article 31, titles as a resolution to respond to climate change by prioritizing health, access, and equality of Brookline's public ways. As part of the pilot, we had some different data points we were collecting, including user feedback surveys, MBTA bus travel times, MBTA bus travel time variability, volume and speed tracked on Burleson Street and secondary roads and residential side streets, vehicle travel time and control delay and queue lengths. And all that data had been presented quarterly to the Transportation Board, posted on the website, and is included in your board materials. Some background on the project. Wrong direction here. So for the timeline, we began planning in 2020, and by 2021, the Brookline Transportation Board authorized the bus party lane pilot, and it was funded by the MBTA. In the summer of 2024, the dedicated bus lanes were implemented on Washington Street between Station Street and the town line, both directions. And then between 2024 and 2025, the original pilot analysis period was planned for 1 year. And then we had a little trouble with the transit signal priority, and we weren't able to activate it until June 2025. And at October 8th, 2025, we went to the Transportation Board and we asked to extend the pilot by 6 months. And this would allow some time to gather additional data while the transit signal priority was active. And the transit signal priority is part of the traffic signal that will try and give the bus more green time on its arrival if it's possible. So it looks at little tweaks in the traffic signal, not huge. It's not like emergency preemption. It's just small adjustments that most people won't be able to see. We went to update the select board on October 14th, 2025. And at that meeting, the select board gave us the direction to conclude the pilot rather than extend it. And the select board gave us direction to look at options and maybe a partial removal in the eastbound bus lane direction. and we kind of halted the data collection at that point. So resources could be directed towards looking at the conclusion and also funding any changes that come out of this. On July 15th, 2026, the Transportation Board voted to conclude the pilot, and the recommendation came from the configuration. The recommendation for the configuration came from the MBTA and town staff looking at operations, the quarterly data, and public and town department feedback. Some takeaways from the bus lane. The westbound bus lane, this segment is working well overall. The eastbound bus lane from Station Street to Boylston Street, this is a small section right as you're leaving Brookline Village. This segment is also functioning well and kind of operates as a queue jump, so it lets the bus get around traffic that's waiting at right as it approaches Route 9. So the bus gets a head start as it makes its left onto Washington, heading inbound Boston. And then the eastbound bus lane, this is from Boylston Street, kind of the high Boylston Street intersection to the town line. This segment is not operating well. We have issues with driver compliance, and this is where most of the complaints that also come in. The data shows bus lanes in this area are providing time savings where they exist, and then the benefits are reduced a little bit when the bus re-enters the general traffic when the bus lanes end. Some general traffic in the area. Route 9 volumes are consistent, and side street volumes did increase moderately. Overall vehicle speeds in the area are lower than the beginning of the pilot. Vehicle travel times are near the same. So even though there's more queuing out there, the amount of time it takes cars to get through the intersections is relatively same as the original before the pilot. And the Boylston Street eastbound approach does show the most significant queuing, and that's where we see the most complaints. So that's kind of the section as you're on Route 9 approaching High Street, that long block between High and Cypress, and also that kind of area between right in front of the fire station. So the pilot conclusion and the next steps, the Transportation Board approved the final configuration, and I have a little diagram here. They are going to remove the eastbound direction from High Street here all the way to the town line. And in this removal, the right turn only lane, which is on the approach to High Street here, that will be turned back to general purpose. So that will allow 2 lanes of traffic to go through the intersection and cross right at the fire station, similar to the pre-pilot conditions. And then they did vote in the westbound direction to keep the bus priority lane. And then this is the queue jump between Station Street and High Street, also voted to stay. And then the final implementation.
Can I ask a question about
Sure.
that particular stretch? I assume I can. The lines in the street on Route 9, in the middle of the street, sort of directing people away from the bus lane, are they going to remain?
The part in front of High Street, this little gore area, that will be removed.
No, I'm talking about right in the middle of the street. There's some.
This part here?
Yeah.
We're still talking on which parts would remain. Definitely the skip lines for the bike lane would stay. Right. And we're working with there's a consultant that's doing the final construction designs. We'll work with them to see whether it makes sense to leave the bus skip lines or remove them. And then we're also looking at ways to improve the intersection, that we might put a big X in signs that say don't block the box to try and discourage vehicles from pulling in if there isn't space. But we haven't worked out those details yet. We want to make sure it's clear to drivers and makes sense to them before that go down.
Yeah, I hope you try to figure out what happens if you don't move or remove the lines in terms of people getting into the 2 lines or 2 lanes on Boylston. But I mean that always has worried me. But at any rate.
All right, go ahead, continue.
And then so the next steps is the final implementation does require the town to get an updated traffic control agreement with MassDOT. So the Gateway East pilot, although this is town right of way, it was a transportation improvement project. And when you use state and federal funds to do road work like this, you need to enter an agreement, kind of just telling the state that you're not going to change it unless you go back to them. So this is just going back to the state and saying we want to remove the bus lane in the eastbound direction. And the town administrator, if you authorize them to sign those documents, would allow us to make these changes. And that's it. And I'm here for questions. And Eileen is also here. I can stop sharing if.
Sure. So thank you very much for that presentation. One question that I have, given that the pilot data showed that the eastbound lane, as you mentioned, still provided net time savings, in particular, I think it was for 3 bus lines, the 60, the 65, the 66, and that driver compliance appeared to be the main barrier to continuing with the eastbound lane. What specific threshold or metric did you look at to justify the recommendation to remove the lane rather than to improve driver compliance by installing physical barriers, for instance, like rumble stripes or something else?
A little hard. So although compliance is a big issue, another part of the problem is there isn't much space to merge. So when you're coming up to the intersection from the west, you're kind of confronted with a right turn lane, and when you want to get over to the left, there's a queue of traffic, so there isn't moving cars. You kind of have to push your way in, and that makes a lot of stress for drivers. And I think that's part of the compliance issue. So it wasn't just enforcement; it's just a lot of people got stuck in that right turn lane, and there wasn't room for them to get over left because there was a queue of cars there. And we had talked to MassDOT about trying to push all the cars over before they got close to the intersection, but they had said strongly that they didn't want it to be one lane. They wanted one lane and a right turn lane, and they didn't want to merge it further back. So some of our constraints are we have to work with MassDOT, who has the right of way west of here. So that limits our ability to try different things. And if we were to push everybody over to one lane before, that could have reduced some of those conflicts. And then another big piece of this is just the feedback. There's over 100 comments from people that filled out the survey and emailed the Gateway East bus pilot email address. And they all highlight this one approach as not just enforcement issues, but issues with merging, with backups in the intersection, and just reviewing those comments and the design issues we had. That's where the recommendation came to remove the eastbound direction.
Michael?
Were there also any conflicts between that eastbound bus lane and drivers who were trying to ultimately turn right either onto, is it the Riverway? The Jamaica Way, or ultimately to Huntington Avenue over the line?
Yep. So there are a lot of right turns there. So as you're coming through the intersection, you could be turning right onto High, which is what the main lane is for when you're approaching. But then beyond that, there is Walnut Street, then there's the Brook House, then there's Pond Ave. And I think a lot of the problem is people didn't know when to enter the bus lane. And also, if they were pulled over, I heard a lot of people saying, well, I was going to take a right. Why I have to be in this lane? And then there were issues with noncompliance, and drivers felt if they had waited to properly get in and then make their right, that they wouldn't be able to get in there because someone was going to be driving there illegally before them. So those were some of the issues I heard. And another part of it too is they're so short together that there isn't much room between the solid red and then the dash red, which you're supposed to get into turn. So I think that was another compliance issue too, is just the amount of space you had to maneuver into the right.
Amanda?
So, I have 2 comments. The first is, thanks for highlighting the compliance issue. I think this is consistent, and I had asked some questions ahead of time in terms of enforcement, but I think a lot of the limitations on enforcement have to do with the fact that there's a lot of opportunity to turn for cars that are going, and so knowing whether someone is illegally driving in the bus lane or is actually making a planning on making a turn is a little bit tricky. And so my comment to you would be the next time we are doing a pilot to figure out what we can do ahead of time to increase compliance, because I think it's really difficult to evaluate the efficacy of a bus priority lane if the buses don't actually have priority of that lane. So to think ahead of time to set up whether it's driver education or rumble strips or things that can actually increase compliance. And then my second point was I understand the recommendation to get rid of the eastbound lane for all of the reasons you've mentioned. But I would like to not give up on the savings that it leads to bus riders having. And so I would love to have some sort, not necessarily me, have some sort of further conversation with even the MBTA as to what we could do for the eastbound direction for the 66 bus, the 65 bus to improve the flow. And so just like one of the things that I was playing with is could those buses go behind the fire station instead of on Route 9 and essentially move the bus stop to Walnut and Boylston so that the buses can go up that way, right? There's some things that I'm sure you can tell me all the reasons that my idea doesn't work, but it would be good to see some brainstorming of how to improve that experience going forward so that we're not just like, oh, didn't work, sucks for you. So just as I guess, a request to continue the conversation for improvements.
Definitely. What point well taken, and we do have my boss, the associate director of transportation. He is from the MBTA and knows the bus routes very well and is already looking at ways that we could help speed up the bus after this, including maybe some signal timing changes or queue jumps. So we're looking at that. We just want to be careful. We don't want to have other impacts that happen, but we're looking at it.
Anyone else? All right, well, thank you very much for that presentation. We'll now move to 7B. And if you could give us a little more context around this vote.
Sure. So this is the traffic control agreement that Dan referenced in his proposal. It's just it allows us to continue onward with the implementation of the westbound bus lane. So if we're able to, it's basically, an amendment to the prior agreement. And so if we can, if you would authorize me to sign that, as is typical with these types of agreements, we can remove the eastbound bus lane from the pilot and continue with the westbound.
All right, any additional questions or comments regarding 7B?
Is it a automatic, or do you actually have to renegotiate with the MBTA?
We've got to do some renegotiation to get the language together, but it's not. Again, we're not agreeing to anything new. We're removing that, and although to Bernard's point, we're thinking about how to organize that particular intersection there, where Harvard terminates into Station in Washington. So, but that's not. There will be no material changes to the roadway there. It will just be about how do we restripe that once that's done.
All right, then I move that we authorize the town administrator to execute an updated traffic control agreement and any related documents necessary to implement the approved modifications. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. All right, thank you again. All right.
Thanks, Aaron.
With that, we will now move to agenda item number 9, command staff salary adjustments, review and possible vote on salary adjustments for command staff in the police and fire departments as funded by the 2026 override.
Yes, so Ann Braga, our HR director, is online, as I believe is Chief Pastor from the police department. This is one of the priorities that was identified for the town in the 2026 override, which the community passed, which we were very grateful. The police department, unlike the fire department, does not have captains. That position was abolished, I think, in 2010. And in its place, we have non-union leaders of the various divisions of the police department, who are the deputy superintendents. Then there is the superintendent of department, who serves as the second in command, and the chief operating officer under the chief. And then you have the chief of police as well, who is a contracted position. So you have these 5 non-union uniformed positions under the chief of police. In the fire department, where there is still that captain rank and a slightly different command structure, the chief of operations is the only non-union uniformed employee other than the chief of department. And when we updated our collective bargaining agreements for the police in particular a couple years ago now, when we negotiated to have the officers leave civil service, there was significant monetary benefits associated with that contract. And then as a result, the gap between the highest union position, which is a lieutenant, and the lowest non-union position, which is a deputy superintendent, grew pretty close, to the point where we were concerned, and we actually saw this borne out when there was a vacant deputy superintendent position, that folks were saying, why should I make the jump for, I lose all my union benefits, I don't have the opportunity to, work details, or, we've been rectifying some of those non-monetary benefits in terms of detail work, in terms of all of that, doing our best to move forward on that work. But the salary gap, or the narrowness of the salary band still remained. Additionally, the superintendent in the police department did not receive any steps. It was a one salary range position, so all they would get is the annual non-union cost of living adjustment, which didn't necessarily reward longevity in the post. So we added 4 additional steps and did all this work and added 4 additional steps, and also 4 steps for the superintendent position. We then made the commensurate changes with the chief of department, the chief of operations in the fire department, to maintain parity there between the chief of fire operations and the superintendent in the police department. So you have Ann's memo in the packet talking about the overall cost. The cost of implementation this year is just under $25,000, $24,016. If approved by you, this would be effective as of the date of your vote, so it's a prospective approval. And given the congratulations that we've extended to Deputy Superintendent O'Neill, who was named the successful candidate in Westwood to be Chief of Police, we may have a deputy superintendent position opening, and so we want to encourage folks to apply for that position, and in so doing, we want to make that a competitive offer in terms of salary.
Any questions, comments? All right, then I move that we vote on the salary adjustments for command staff in the police and fire departments as funded by the 2026 override and as just described by the town administrator. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. With that, we move to our next agenda item, which is the public hearing, continuation of lodging house license violation hearing for 1459 Beacon Street.
And according to my computer, we have 17 seconds left
Yes.
before 7 o'clock.
The owner is here, so we'll wait.
17 seconds.
There we go. It's now officially 7 o'clock on the dot. We've never been in this on time since I've been here, so well done to this select board. Congrats. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Pappas, for attending. We're at a point now where we have not seen further progress. Obviously, we want to have the owner have the opportunity to make a statement, but at this point, it's staff's recommendation based on the conversations that we've had previously that the select board simply not renew this license and continue on. Obviously, given that you only have one resident, you don't require a license to do what you're doing, nor to sell the building. It doesn't have any impact on the value of the building. But at this juncture, we can't proceed holding this out as a potential lodging house when we don't have compliance with this. And so we welcome, obviously, any comments you may have, but, it's the recommendation of staff at this
We
juncture.
have the license for 65 years, 65 years, we pay taxes, we pay $20,000 every quarterly, which I'm now paying out of my pocket to the town. So let me just tell you, the portico is not falling. It's not going to fall today, and it's not going to fall tomorrow. And I don't have to be a structural engineer. Structural engineering, by the way, is not a perfect science at all. It's physics and mathematics. But what is a perfect science is a mason who puts his hands on concrete every day, on bricks, and on terracotta. These people work, they put it together, they take it apart. I've contacted many, many structural engineers. I don't know what their issues are, but they have some. The last one I spoke to, who I wanted to hire, came, looked, climbed a little bit, paid him right then and there, because he asked me to pay him there, which I did. And I said, do you work with masons? You must have a mason. He says, oh yes, I can get you some names. I said, that would be great. That would be very helpful. I'll wait to hear from you. Yeah, I'll call or text you. And I waited, and I called, and I texted, and I got nothing. So I called the office, and because I had his cell phone, I called his office, and his secretary said, he's out on the road or whatever. He'll be back this afternoon. Doesn't call me back. I get a call the next day. Hi, this is Barboza. I said, Barboza who? Who are you? He said, I'm the mason. Right. So he comes. And I say to him, can you look at this? He looked. And I said, what do you think of this? He really climbed up. And he said, I'm not concerned about it. I said, can you please give me something in writing? I'll be back. Well, I have to talk to we work together with the engineer. I said, okay, can you give me an estimate? Yeah, I'll give you an estimate. I'll write up an estimate. I said, you can either drop it off, at your convenience. I can come pick it up wherever you are. Crickets. I'm up to here with these people, but I'm not giving up. I've got somebody coming tomorrow, another mason. Hopefully he's a serious person, because sometimes I don't like to pull the gender card. I don't like women that do that. I don't like anybody that does that. But I'm starting to get a complex here, I think that if my brother was alive, or my dad, I think I would have progressed a little more. So I'm not using that as an excuse. This is how it is in the real world. And if you're a lady, you've experienced it in business. So, you want to take the license after 66 years. Congratulations. By the way, I'll be talking to the tax collectors, because I've been paying these taxes within empty buildings. There should be some adjustment and some refund to me. Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
All right, as this is a public hearing, does anyone want to be heard in the public? Anybody in the room? Anyone online?
Nobody online.
All right. Members of the select board, anyone have any comments, questions?
I just have one question, and that is, if we move to remove the license and at a later point this problem is fixed, is there any process or condition for reapplying for the license?
Yes, it would be the same way as any other applicant. They could reapply. They would pay the fee, which is the same as the fee to renew, and they would be able to get the license back. So, yeah, you are not. This is not a revocation of a license, right? It's different. It's not. This. I think this is. I know it's frustrating to the owner, and I'm dealing with very similar issues in my apartment building. I know that it's frustrating to try and get hold of contractors and so forth when you're trying to run a business and have a day job and have a life. But the reality of the situation is this has been an issue for years, and the building department has a written determination that hasn't been challenged by another expert, and we have to go with that. We've extended every courtesy we can. We've extended this all through the summer. You know, this was due to be renewed in January, and now here we are, it's August. So I think we've been as fair as we can be, and definitely cognizant of the applicant's position. But the reality is we can't have a lodging house with an open violation like this. That violation has to be addressed and closed before they can reapply for a license.
Anthony?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Bernard?
I think I heard you say that she only has one tenant there.
Yes.
And therefore doesn't need a license.
She doesn't need the license.
Okay,
No.
so this could just go on and on and on until she decides that she wants to go out and market the building to other tenants.
Yep, and you've heard. I fully respect her position and the concern. She wants to have the license. It's a value. It's a value to her and her family, and so we don't discount that, and we respect that. But the reality of the situation is, I have a document from the building department that says that building is unsafe, and I don't have any argument to the contrary. So we just can't allow a lodging house to keep going with a clear finding from the building department that it's not safe.
We've also offered multiple extensions in order for
I remember.
the owner to try to address this. It's been going on for, at least this hearing, has been going on for months.
Yep.
And we still don't have a viable solution to it. So given that there is nothing that would prevent the owner from reapplying for a license once the repair is effectuated, I do think we're in a position that we should non-renew the license at this time. And obviously, she can apply again in the future. And also, it doesn't actually have a meaningful impact, given that she has one resident right now. It's not even operating as a lodging house, and hasn't been for quite some time. So with that, I move that we do not renew the lodging house license for 1459 Beacon Street.
Yes.
Bernard? Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes, and we'll also close the public hearing. And that concludes item number 10.
You're ahead of schedule.
We are, so why don't we go to number 12?
Let's wait 7 minutes. No.
So I want to go to item number 12 then, Brookline Recreational Reciprocal Agreement.
Yep, and I believe Tim Davis is online. Let me just confirm.
He is.
Yes, great. So Rec Director Tim Davis is online. This is a formalization of an agreement that has been in existence for many years between the town and Beaver Country Day School, a private school in the community, regarding shared field space. Beaver has been asking for a number of years to codify this agreement, to write down how these are being used. It is of extreme benefit to both parties. It's a benefit to Beaver Country Day because of its field space. It's a benefit to the town because of our limited field space. This is the type of agreement we want to be signing with all people who own fields in Brookline, all private schools. Tim and I actually had a meeting today in which we laid out Tim has done a great job, and his team have done a great job laying out where the priorities of the rec department are and how they line up with what private owners in town have available. And we're going to go on a roadshow. We're going to go out to these organizations, and we're going to make the pitch that, as nonprofits that benefit from the community, we would appreciate the opportunity to enter into similar agreements where we can make reciprocal offers and the town can expand its recreational offerings beyond what we currently have by sharing field space and field usage. So ultimately, we had hoped to be able to present this to you and the Parks and Rec Commission simultaneously. It's August. Parks and Rec had a problem with quorum, but they are going to review it in September. But given that that's a close space with limited margin for error, given that we need to be using these ASAP, we wanted to present this to the Select Board tonight. So that we move forward there. We have spoken to the Commissioner of the Parks and Rec Commission, the Chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission, making sure that there's understanding there of what's going on. And so, Tim, have I covered everything. Is there anything additional? I mean, it might be worth talking a little bit about how these fields are being used and the cool programming that we're doing.
Always. Thank you, Chaz. Good evening, everybody. Tim Davis, Director of Recreation. Chaz summarized it perfectly when it comes to what the agreement is. Our relationship with Beaver has been very strong. They're incredible partners of the Recreation Department, specifically around field usage, shared facility usage that really truthfully spans beyond athletics. They're partners with community events and other things that we do on that side of town. Really, the details of this is that the town, the recreation department, is given access to Beaver's athletic facilities. We run our field hockey program there. We run our lacrosse program there, the town's lacrosse program there, and town field hockey and town soccer. And really, the use of those fields are the reason that these programs are successful. As we know, field space is limited in town, and the demand for it is significant. So being able to gain access to such facilities like Beaver really alleviates pressure and allows us to put on our programs, but also expand our programs year over year. Field hockey being the most up and coming example of that, expanding it this fall as a program. And in turn, as mentioned, Beaver gains access to the Sewell fields right across the street from their entrance, from their property, the upper Sewell field as well as the lower turf, where they can put on their athletic events that they need because of the fact that they are also strapped for field space during the week. It has worked for many years. Again, they've been wonderful partners, and I do think it's worth pointing out that the times in which Beaver uses the town fields has no effect on town programming, high school needs, school needs directly when the school bells go off. So the impact of Beaver using the town fields is limited, which is obviously wonderful given the demand that we have across town. But again, the impact that our use of Beaver has on our program and the town is significant. So really a thank you to Beaver for continually being open to this agreement. And again, just looking for the support here tonight to really, I think, signal that everybody is in agreement and in support of this continued partnership together.
And one final note on this. The signature page, just because lawyers pass it back and forth, says Board of Selectmen. It's being amended to say Select Board. That's
correct.
That's one where we need to be consistent on that. So apologies for that, but we will make sure that is correct when you sign it.
And not use old templates.
So I do have a couple questions. So regarding the specific substance of the agreement, it appears that Beaver Country gets to use Brookline properties from 2:30 to 5:30 on weekdays. That's a 3-hour stretch. But Brookline gets to use Beaver Country on weekends, which helps, but during weekdays from 5:30 to dusk in the fall, and that effectively might only be 1 hour. So that does seem like a little bit of an imbalance. Could you address that?
So you're correct. When it's looking at time on paper, yes, it's an imbalance, but our fall needs are much more limited than our spring needs. So the sports that are being played on in the fall over there don't need hours and hours and hours. As mentioned, it's field hockey specifically this coming fall, so the extreme need for 2, 3, 4 hours is not there. So it kind of works conveniently with the sunset right now.
All right. And then my other question, you're saying that this agreement would not impact Brookline's needs for Brookline properties, but I noticed that Beaver would get access to the Baker tennis courts in the spring, and that overlaps with Brookline tennis season. And while it's been over 26 years since I was on the Brookline tennis team, back then we practiced at Baker, probably practiced somewhere else, but still, is there some other town need for the Baker tennis courts that this would impact?
Yeah, excuse me. So one with Baker, it's in it that they leave, I think, at least one court open for public. But when it comes to the requests from Brookline High, they are spread about at other sites, most notably Warren Park at the Elliott Rec Center is their main location now. So their permit requests don't involve Baker as of the recent years.
All right. Then procedurally, why, and I'm not saying this is your fault or anyone in particular, but why is this coming so last minute as opposed to being negotiated earlier so that Park and Rec would have had an opportunity to more formally opine on this.
I mean, that's also on our end. It's on the select board office end. Rec has been working on this and negotiating this for some time, and it really was just that our schedules to get this to over the line in terms of final review didn't get there until July, and so it's not through Rec's fault or Beaver's fault. It really is just that's when it cleared the final hurdle. But they had been working on this for some time in advance of that.
But I think there was a previous written version, so I've obtained a copy of a 2014 version of this agreement, which is almost identical.
Yep.
So first, what happened between 2024 when it expired and today? What was governing this? And second, if this is just changing a few dates from the 2014 agreement, I'm wondering what the delay was.
I think it had to do a little bit with the change in relationship with Beaver. When we signed this in 2014, there was a pilot agreement as well with Beaver, and now there is not. And we wanted to talk through the overarching relationship with Beaver and whether or not this made sense in the context of the other community, the other potential open space that we were talking about. So we wanted to do the due diligence to make sure in renewing this, even if ultimately nothing changed, that we were still confident that we were getting the benefits that we needed, and that it still made sense from an operational perspective. And so we needed to do that due diligence, even if there's not a lot of change in the document. It's really more about ensuring that overall, holistically, this is right for the town's needs at this time.
Amanda?
Along those lines, if there used to be a pilot governing this, are we getting a worse deal now on balance?
On
Because
balance?
now we're trading our field space for what would have been theoretically pilot funds and or field usage.
There were always two different agreements. There was a pilot agreement, a tax agreement for payment in lieu of taxes, and then there was the field sharing agreement. So those had been kept separate. The pilot agreement with Beaver was terminated as a result of, I won't say as a result of, but concurrent to a dispute between the neighborhood and the school as to whether or not teachers would be given parking permits to park on the street. Ultimately, the transportation board authorized a pilot to do that. When there was talk about making that pilot permanent, there was an appeal from the transportation board to the select board. And while that was pending and those conversations were being had, the school said, you know what, if we're not going to be, we see which way the wind is blowing. If the town is going to support the neighbors on this, then it doesn't make any sense for us to continue with the pilot. And so that was the end of the Beaver Country Day pilot program, unfortunately. And with that said, we had a conversation at that point about whether it made sense to continue with the field sharing agreement, and we ultimately determined that it was mutually beneficial for us to do so. We didn't want to cut lines of communication. We wanted to continue to, work in an area in which we were, working well together, and we didn't want to let this neighborhood dispute upend the use of fields for rec programming, which is and continues to be a critical need. So. It was a tough situation at that juncture, and it just kind of reflects the delicate balance that needs to be done with these issues of political valence. The neighborhood was adamant they didn't want people parking on the street, and Beaver was equally adamant that if we took that away from them, that they would cancel that pilot, and that's what happened.
And are there any conversations, I know we can't give indications of that, but conversations to restart some sort of pilot with Beaver?
I think they would have to come as part of a discussion about parking.
Okay.
Another question, is 10 years really the appropriate length of time, especially as my understanding is that Park and Rec and Recreation is looking at our broader townwide needs, and if we're locking ourselves into an agreement that runs for 10 years, that really reduces flexibility. And I know there's a clause that says this is revocable, but I'm not sure Beaver would appreciate if we were to immediately revoke something we just agree to.
Yeah, and I think that's why, this is part of the conversations that we were having internally about whether this made sense to keep going. And ultimately, we kind of internally thinking about it said, yes, 10 years is an appropriate amount of time. If there is a need to renegotiate or, I wouldn't think we would just be in a situation where we would revoke this without, there would be plenty of advance notice. The needs of the community or the needs of the school were changing, and we would be having those conversations rather than just saying one day out of the blue, hey, we're revoking this agreement. I don't think there's, I think the ability to have certainty in terms of the access that we have to the fields for that set amount of time as we work through what I assume are going to be fairly complex conversations with many different landowners about the availability of other options and what they would be used for, both in concert with this agreement and otherwise. 10 years feels like a good opportunity for us, a safe opportunity for the parties to be able to say, we have this, it's a solid deal, and in the event that we need to change something, we're able to go to those groups and change it.
All right. I'm also looking at a copy of the Parks and Recreation Commission Roles and Responsibilities as adopted on November 12th of 2024. And it cites a state law, 1991 Mass Acts Chapter 198, that authorizes the Park and Recreation Commission of the town of Brookline to set fees and charges for all park and recreation programs. Now, authorizes, I suppose, doesn't mean that they have to exercise that authority, but by voting on this ahead of them taking it up, aren't we effectively bypassing them?
So you can see on the signature page that there is a signature lines for the commission. We do think that in order for this to be, truly effective and reflect the needs of the community, that Parks and Rec should vote on this. But again, this is about, unfortunately, we weren't able to get a quorum of the commission together before the start of the school year. And so being able to proceed with the select board's blessing and having the commission able to review it at a later time when they have a quorum would be preferable to not doing that.
All right. Amanda?
Along those lines, where the rates that are included in here are like something that has been negotiated previously, that I'm assuming there might be some sort of like standard rate for usage?
Tim, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the rates, as David mentioned, the rates are set by the Park and Rec Commission. So those rates that they are working off of are the field permit rates for the town, as well as the round and driving range rates for the golf course. So the fees that are being charged are reflective of what we would actually be charging for their hours using the town-owned properties, using the fields as if we would any other group.
I'm just curious, and this may be related, may not. Has Fisher Hill been looked at for use by our private schools in town or for Brookline entities? What's that being used for now?
Fisher Hill is used quite often by the recreation department. It's host to our soccer program, specifically, really at large. So that in season, that field is booked from the time we're able to get kids on till the time the sun goes down. So that is more, in our opinion, a town asset that we are using for town programs.
All right, and it's already being fully used?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions, comments? All right, let's see here. So I'll go ahead and move supporting the Brookline Recreation Reciprocal Agreement for facility use.
Yes.
Word. Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And Al abstain. All right, so now we are past 7:15, so we can go to the public hearing on MBTA tree removal.
Who do we have from the Parks Department taking the lead on this?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. As the appellant, would I go first?
I think it's appropriate to let the Parks Department just set the stage, and then certainly the appellant, I think, should have absolutely the right to speak, but I just want to make sure that the department introduces the item which is up, which is typically their practice.
Okay, ordinarily in an appeal, the appellant goes first and raises their issues, and then there's a response from me. So I would propose readjusting the order. And here I am.
I would propose that the department speak first.
Is the the department here? All right, so if you can offer a broad summary of the issue, not necessarily any particular position, but just a summary background information.
Good evening, everyone. Jack Schleifer, tree warden and urban forestry manager for the town of Brookline. So this is an appeal to a hearing that was held by the tree planting committee on August 5th. And at that hearing, the MBTA, who I believe are here virtually, presented the proposal to remove 3 trees at the Brandon Hall T station. So I know we'd all been here months ago for many removals to be discussed associated with this project. So this is all because of the Sea Line accessibility project that is currently making a bunch of noise out on Beacon Street and making a bunch of upgrades to the stations as well. And when all of this work was happening, I will leave it to the MBTA team to present a bit more on this, and they have slides. But we knew that a ramp was going to need to be installed at the Brandon Hall station, and that ramp comes quite close to 3 existing trees that were left through the prior removal hearing process. And my team and the MBTA arborists and others all had concerns about the roots of those trees being fully excavated when this ramp is installed. And the ramp is about 8 feet to 6 feet away from the trunks of many of these trees. It's a 30-inch oak tree and then 2 about 6-inch oak trees. And these are on Upper Beacon Street westbound at the Brandon Hall T station, for what that's worth. And we did a bunch of air spading, exposed those roots to see exactly what they look like using pressurized air to understand like where they run and what the extent of root loss would have to be for this work to happen. And in all of that, the MBTA arborists, 2 contracted arborists, suggested, and there's a report associated with it, that we can't safely preserve these trees while doing all of this work because the root system would be so undermined. I agreed with that, as did other arborists who were there. So that's why it was brought to the tree planting committee ultimately. They voted unanimously to approve the removal of those 3 trees, and that was associated or conditional on some replanting that the MBTA will present. And that is kind of where we are right now.
All right, thank you. Why don't we hear from the appellant now?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Jocelyn Murphy. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 16, and I'm the appellant in this matter. I want to start by thanking Mr. Schleifer for the work that he does. I'm thrilled that he's in Brookline, and I think he truly appreciates trees, so I'm thrilled that he's part of the team. Last week, the Tree Planning Committee conducted a hearing on what I understood to be the MBTA's request to remove 3 trees at the Brandon Hall MBTA station, in addition to the 96 or more trees that had already been approved for removal along Beacon Street. There was no information in the meeting packet identifying the trees by type, size, or specific location. As it turns out, one of those trees was a mature 30-inch red oak that had been documented by a resident in February as a nesting site of a protected eastern screech owl. At the earlier hearing on February 3rd, 2026, MBTA Representative Matt Conover stated that the owl would be flagged with the MBTA's environmental team and that they would work with the team to ensure that construction would cause minimum impact to any creatures, but in particular to the owl that had been identified by the resident. Then MBTA Representative Gwen Dunleavy remarked that the tree had originally been slated for removal, but through coordination with the town, they were able to find a design that protected the tree. At the August 5th hearing, there was no mention of the significance of the tree or of the owl during the staff presentation. Instead, it was a resident who asked, after their presentation, whether this was the same tree that was occupied by the owl. Tree Warden Schleifer stated that it was. Another resident pointed out that eastern screech owls have a tendency to return to the same nesting area, and the MBTA was asked whether owl boxes could be installed in the area as an alternative to maintaining the tree. MBTA Representative Gwen Dunleavy responded that the proposal seemed reasonable and that they would speak to the project team. At the conclusion of the hearing, the Tree Planning Committee voted on an amended motion to condition the removal of an aggregate of 42 inches of tree by replanting 6 trees. However, the size of the trees to be replanted was not discussed. I respectfully suggest that the MBTA should be responsible for mitigating not only the loss of the trees, but of the owl habitat in a manner that will offer the greatest opportunity for rehabilitation by the owl. Mr. Schleifer is familiar with those requirements and has access to a wildlife expert who is willing to assist. If this board's decision is to uphold the vote of the Tree Planting Committee, I ask that conditions be imposed regarding the recommended size of the trees to be replanted, and whether on legal or moral grounds, requiring the installation of eastern screech owl boxes as recommended by a wildlife expert in the area of the tree removal. It is my understanding, having spoken to a wildlife expert, that it is particularly important to inspect the tree for both mature and juvenile owls, and to install the boxes before the tree is removed to ensure rehabilitation. Thank you.
Jack, do we have a response or update from either the team or the MBTA?
Yes, I'm happy to respond again. Jack Schleifer, tree warden and urban forestry manager with the town. Also, I believe Gwen Dunleavy from the MBTA has some slides to present, but might need access to do so. And yes, I appreciate everything that was just said, and I think that, I myself care quite a lot about this owl and the habitat, and I also know that these trees were ones that we fought very hard to try to preserve. We just weren't able to find a design that was compatible with all of that. But not here to defend that, here to say that I went out earlier today with Alex Cassie, another staff member for the town sustainability team, and looked, and we identified a bunch of locations where we believe owl boxes can be put up. I think there's excitement and commitment towards putting up owl boxes to replace this habitat and pushing as we can to get as many trees replanted in the vicinity. But I think if Alexander wants to add anything, or if Gwen wants to add anything, that's most of what I wanted to say.
So just a specific question I have there. So who would be charged with the responsibility of putting up the owl boxes? Is there an associated financial cost to that? There probably is, but is it relatively minimal?
Good evening, everyone. Alexandra Vecchio, Director of Sustainability and Natural Resources. As Jack said, we've identified 5 locations for owl boxes, and the town has placed an order for those. The total is $212.
Okay. And in terms of the appellant's suggestion of some kind of conditional language around tree width, what are we able to commit to on that front?
Yeah, again, Jack Schleifer, tree warden, urban forestry manager. I think that will need to be a conversation with the MBTA. They'd already committed to replanting 6 northern red oaks, which would be about 2.5 to 3 inches in diameter, so a max of 18 caliper inches being mitigated. I had, in the tree planting committee meeting and in past conversations, asked if we can have a more dense reforestation replanting kind of model around those trees with other species to add some biodiversity and I think help replace more of that habitat. So I think that's an option that I would like to talk about more with that team. And then there are also some other gaps and or dead small trees just east of there that could be replaced. So I think there are opportunities to mitigate more thoroughly.
All right, thank you. Could we maybe hear from the MBTA on the tree question about what some of the options are that might comport with what the town arborist and the appellant are suggesting?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Gwen Dunleavy. I'm the Deputy Chief of Integrated Transit Programs at the MBTA. Many of you were probably already familiar with me. I presented at this board quite a few times over the past year, including about trees. So when it comes to the owl boxes, we're happy to have our contractors who will be on site already put those up in the trees and locations identified by the town. As far as tree plantings, we've been working diligently with Jack and his team to find the best locations, sizes, and types of trees to plant in this area. We plan to continue to work with them. I know we've already committed to planting over 100 trees along the corridor, and we are looking for more opportunities and locations to plant them. I know the red oaks that are currently planned to be planted here that were presented to the tree planting committee last week were chosen due to how large they grow. So you have some large shade trees in this area, similar to what we have around here. That's why they're spaced a little more widely apart than we have in other areas to give them that room to grow. But we're happy to continue to work with Jack and his team to find the best types of trees to plant, best sizes and locations along this corridor.
All right, does anyone else have comments or questions?
Mr.
Appellants?
Chair, if I may, one last question.
Go ahead.
For Gwen Dunleavy. The wildlife person that I spoke to from the New England Wildlife Center said it was particularly important to inspect the hollow for occupancy and also to ensure that the boxes are installed before the tree comes down. Otherwise, it's unlikely that the owl that's the occupant now would rehabitate there.
So it sounds like the boxes will go up as soon as they're received, or just about. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at what point do you anticipate the trees actually coming down?
That will likely be fairly soon. I know we are currently working on the ramp in that area, and as Jack had identified, leaving the tree up with the excavation that we are doing does create an unsafe situation. So we don't want to leave that up any longer than we have to for fear that we just get a really windy day and one of those trees falls down. We don't want to have that happen and end up with something being damaged or worse, someone being hurt.
Do you have an estimated time window and how long the owl boxes could be up before the trees need to come down? Are we looking at a week, 2 weeks?
I don't know the timeline for when the town is getting those boxes in. I know that we have the Green Line shut down right now, so if we can, we would like to take those trees down likely before the end of the week. Again, because we don't want to leave them up any longer than we have to when it potentially causes an unsafe condition.
We have one owl box that we already have in stock, so if you're willing to do 2 installs for us, then we can do one this week with the box that we have, and the others we will have in before the end of next week.
Yeah, that should be fine.
Anyone else?
I'm sorry, one more question.
All right, go ahead.
The New England Wildlife Center actually offered to provide boxes, but more importantly, from what I understand, the boxes have to be specific to the eastern screech owl. They have particular habits for their real estate, and so I could probably get my hands on another box. But the important thing is to ensure that they're installed before the tree comes down. I mean, I understand this has been in the works since July 20th. So a few more days presumably would not be terribly difficult.
Well, it sounds like the sooner the better for getting these owl boxes, and if there can be a joint effort, however we obtain them, I think that would be helpful. And clearly the trees need to come down, unfortunately, because that poses a safety risk to the public. It's also important that we remember that the reason we're undertaking this project is to improve accessibility for those with disabilities, and that really needs to be a paramount consideration here. But to the extent that we can mitigate the loss of screech owls and relocate them, I think all of us are motivated to see that happen.
Thank you, and I understand the excavation has not been done yet, so asking for a week might be reasonable, but I appreciate the board's attention to this matter. Thank you.
All right. Michael?
Thank you. There are a couple of other things I wanted to ask. But first, I wanted to address the detail of the protected status of these birds. And I did a little research on the Fish and Wildlife Service website, which administers the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, otherwise referred to as the MBTA. According to the Fish and Wildlife Service website, it says, and I quote, while it is illegal to collect, possess, or by any means transfer possession of migratory bird nests, the MBTA, in this case the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, does not contain any prohibition that applies to the destruction of a bird nest alone without eggs or birds in it, provided that no possession occurs during the destruction. based on that, I wanted to ask whether or not the nest in question has been confirmed to contain no eggs or chicks or juveniles.
So we have spoken to our environmental department about this. This is not the season that it would typically contain eggs or juveniles. We have had people keep an eye out, and no one has actively seen the bird in the nest recently. That is not to say that it won't come back at some point, but as of this time, we do not believe there are any eggs or birds present in the nest.
Is it possible to do a visual inspection?
Yes, not easily, but certainly it is possible.
Can we ask that it be done just in the matter of completeness?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the second question I think has already been covered. And the last question I had was for the tree warden, and that is that in terms of the understanding the safety risk of cutting down this tree, if the MBTA were to cut down this tree, if the MBTA were to proceed with their construction and damage the roots as expected, can you sort of give us a timeline or quantify in some manner the safety risk of having those roots removed?
Yes, Jack Schleifer, tree warden, urban forestry manager. It's always hard to exactly quantify risk in arboriculture just because, there's so much uncertainty and so many variables. But four arborists have looked at this and said that once that's done, it'll be a very high risk tree. The reality is that it's growing on this hillside, and these roots are going to be excavated on the low side of the slope. So, with the road there and the wires and catenaries and the MBTA infrastructure and the occupancy rate being quite high of the strike zone, it's much too concerning for us to just let leave there. So I would consider it a high risk tree once that work is done.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing, so would any members of the public like to be heard, either in the room or online?
Kara Peterson online has her hand raised.
All right, Kara Peterson, go right ahead.
Hi, sorry, I was trying to unmute. I'm Dr. Kara Peterson. I live at 1454 Beacon Street, right between Summit and Brandon Hall. I respectfully would support Jack Schleifer's points for mitigation of the newly planned loss of the red oak tree and Jocelyn Murphy's reasonable request to make concrete, well-timed official commitments and requirements to protect the habitat of the eastern screech owl before the felling of the tree, since in the course of tonight's meeting, it's become quite clear that timeliness is critical in this matter. And I appreciate that Gwen Dunleavy has made that commitment, at least as I understood in the last few minutes, that was true. Also, I just have a question, and that perhaps it was covered and I just didn't hear it or see it, but could there just be an explanation as to why this wasn't known earlier on when all of this process was going forwards and we were very particularly focused on this group of trees at Brandon Hall? Thank you very much.
You're welcome to answer that question.
Do you want to hear from MBTA?
Whoever wants to take it. So, I guess MBTA, go ahead.
Happy to. So, as I think most people on this meeting know, that MBTA had been working hard with the town to try to mitigate how many trees needed to be removed to perform the work of this project. I think someone earlier in this meeting had mentioned that this was one of the trees that originally had been planned to be taken down, and through changes to the design, we had hoped that we had come up with something that wouldn't make it necessary. Unfortunately, in starting to excavate, and I think Jack described the process of air spading, where we use compressed air to blow dirt away from roots, investigate their condition, we found that too many of the large structural roots of these trees were aimed down slope and would be cut throughout the excavation and installation of the ramp. They aren't directly in the path of the ramp. As Jack said, they're about 6 to 8 feet away, depending on the tree. but the size and quantity of roots that would be cut through the excavation for the foundations for the ramp left this unsafe condition. If the roots had gone a different direction, then we may have been able to save them, which was our original hope.
All right. Would either of you like to add to the MBTA's remarks in response to that question?
Yeah, Jack Schleifer, Tree Warden, Urban Forestry Manager. I think Gwen covered it pretty well there. I think there was a lot of design back and forth, seeing, exactly how far the ramp can be scooched down away from the trees, and exactly how it could be, the foundation could be constructed in different ways that might work around the roots. And all of those different alternatives had their own challenges for other tree preservation in the area or meeting the minimum safe distance requirements between the ramp and the train. So there was just a lot of back and forth and in the weeds work kind of hashing out the design. And we'd hope that we could save them until it came into clarity what our constraints were.
All right, thank you. Who do we have next to speak?
Kayla Finn online.
All right, Caitlin Finn, whenever you're ready.
Hello, it's Kayla Finn. I am the resident who flagged this initially. I live right across from the Brandon Hall station. I've been watching that owl for a while. I'm really, really sad to hear that this tree is going. I understand the conditions around the tree removal. I attended the last meeting where we went over all of this, but basically I just am coming here to provide any additional information that I can, whether it's habits that we recorded or that I'm a photographer also on the side, so I have plenty of pictorial evidence or pictures that I can provide. I'd be happy to. Frequently we watch the owl fly, let's see, it would be flying westbound during its hunting, typically went westbound. A lot of times it flew east. There's another tree just over, I'm not sure on the distance, but it would hang out in that tree a lot when, during the day when there's some other drama going on with the other birds and animals in the area. So basically, I'm just here today to provide any additional information. Happy to work with anybody, happy to help get these boxes in if that's what it takes to get the public support behind you guys, getting these boxes so that we can make sure that this habitat remains for this owl. So that's really all I have for now.
All right, do we have any other speakers?
No, not online.
Looks like the appellant would like to be heard from again. Go ahead.
I would just like to acknowledge the many people that wrote in. I believe they wrote to you, they wrote to the town meeting member listserv, so I'd like to acknowledge them and thank them for their contributions. Thank you.
All right. Any select board members want to be heard further? All right, why don't we close the public hearing then and take a vote. So based on what I've heard, it sounds to me like even though we have an appeal, everybody has the same ultimate goals in mind here, which is to try to save the screech owl, try to provide as much time as safely possible for the owl to go into the owl box, to also look into the hollow to sort of get a full inventory of whether there are some juveniles, some eggs, so that we know the full situation. But this is highly time sensitive, and I don't think it would necessarily be appropriate to tie firm conditions to something that's a high safety risk. But I do think we can say that we want best efforts to be made toward having the owl boxes up post haste and trying to save as much of the habitat as we can. So with that best efforts language, I would like to move that we affirm and the decision by the Tree Planting Committee on August 5th, 2026.
Yes.
Bernard? Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Thank you all for the time. I just also really want to commend Jack Schleifer, our tree warden that you've heard from, as well as Bill Smith, who've been working very, very closely with the MBTA on this project for a long time, but particularly the last few weeks to do their very best to think about this design and look at all the potential options. So they've been putting in a great deal of work, and I really appreciate it. So thank you.
All right, thank you. So that brings us to our final agenda item, although it's a multi-parter, boards and commissions appointments. 13A, Board of Assessors. Nicholas Araniello.
You have one vacancy and one position, and as we talked about at your last meeting, this is a somewhat unique board in that it requires specialized expertise. It is a paid position. With Harold Peterson's retirement, there is an opening.
All right, I felt that he was clearly qualified, and he answered all our questions quite thoroughly and well, and we don't have any other applicants, not that that would necessarily make a difference. So I move that we appoint Nicholas Araniello to the Board of Assessors. Bernard?
Yes.
For a term of,
How long's the term?
I believe it's 3 years. I will double check. Yes, 3 years.
For a term of 3 years.
yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Next up, Conservation Commission. Now here we have 5 candidates. There is 1 vacancy and probably a second vacancy that will open in September.
Yep, and I confirmed this with the staff in charge of this committee, as did Melanie. The committee would like you to make 2 appointments here, one immediately and one to be effective in September. The individual in question is stepping down, but they wanted to wait for their replacement to be confirmed before they did.
So would we be appointing that second person now?
Yes, so basically
Okay.
you'd make the appointment, and then that, when you make an appointment to a board that doesn't have a vacancy available, they fill the next available space. So when that person will step down, that person will fill into that slot automatically.
All right. So based on the interviews, I was extremely impressed by 2 in particular, Ernest Cook and Matthew Eddy. I also thought Kelly Brilliant was quite good, and I believe those are the 3 that have been recommended to us, correct?
I believe so. I'm going to double check. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. So the 2 that I would personally want to appoint would be Ernest Cook and Matthew Eddy, with Kelly Brilliant as an associate member. That's where I'm at now, but I want to hear from others. Thoughts, anyone? Michael?
So, first of all, fundamentally, I agree with you. Those 3 candidates all have extensive experience, both in the work of the Conservation Commission and also in community work and in education work as well. I believe that we need to order the 2 that we. Do we need to order the 2 that we?
In practice, I doubt it's going to make a difference because the commission will meet again. I don't think there will be an intervening meeting of the commission at which the individual in question who is stepping down, that individual can submit their resignation, and then the seat will be available. So there's no question of priority here.
Okay. Okay.
Alexander, am I right about that?
Sorry, Alexander Vecchio, Director of Sustainability and Natural Resources. So we have 1 current vacancy, and then the chair is stepping down, but she's just finishing up an ongoing hearing that's been going on for multiple meetings. That hearing is happening right now. I'm not sure at this point if they have closed that hearing or if it will continue to another meeting. If it does continue to another meeting, it would be the first week of September. So I think just to play, just in case, it might be good to rank for the one that's open and the one that's coming open.
Got it. Boy,
Please.
that hearing is still going on. Wow.
Anyone else want to be heard on these candidates? Amanda?
I have already forgotten which of the 3 you said would be alternate, but of your 3, only one is a female, and I would push for her to have one of the full seats.
Bernard?
I was looking at the 3 that you mentioned. I think all are well qualified. I had identified Kelly Brilliant, your female applicant, and Matthew Eddy. Matthew Eddy, was involved with the Muddy River Restoration Project, which I thought was, very important background experience. And I also was just kind of impressed with how he approached the interview. And of course, Kelly Brilliant was involved with the Fenway Alliance, which I thought was pretty relevant to the Conservation Commission, and her understanding of the issues that would be brought up before the commission. I thought was pretty good. So
All right, anyone
So
else?
my two are Kelly Brilliant and Matthew Eddy, for whatever that's worth.
I currently stand at Ernest Cook and Kelly Brilliant. I think those are the ones who impressed me the most.
Michael?
I would probably choose Kelly Brilliant first and Matthew Eddy second, and have Ernest Cook as an alternate.
Statutorily, can we have an alternate or?
I'm sorry, not alternate, associate.
Associate.
Okay.
I misspoke.
All right, so based on the straw poll, I think we see where this is headed. So it sounds like it'll be first choice. I move Kelly Brilliant. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Second choice, Matthew Eddy.
Yes.
Bernard? Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
So if I would have preferred Ernest Cook, I should vote no or abstain on this, right?
It's up to you. So I'm basing this on the reality that in our straw poll, it was 2 votes for Ernest Cook and 3
Okay.
for Matthew
I'll
Eddy.
vote yes.
All right, and I also vote yes.
No shame to Matthew Eddy.
No
He was great.
objection to him.
No,
Right.
No, Matthew Eddy's great. I don't.
Yes. And then I thought Ernest Cook was actually my favorite of the 3, although all 3 are great. I really appreciated his national experience, and I think that would be very beneficial of his bringing those insights from his national work to the local level. So I would like him to be part of the conversation. So I would like to invite him to be an associate member. So I move that we appoint Ernest Cook as an associate member. Bernard?
Yes.
Mike?
Or a term of.
Or a term of 3 years, correct? Or 1 year we're doing for associates?
You can do, when you have appointed associate members, you haven't specified a term, which typically means it's the same term as members, which in this case would be 3 years. You can do a 1-year term. It's entirely in your jurisdiction.
How do other board members feel? 1 year, 3
Would
years?
the associate member move into a new opening?
So as an associate member, right, is basically an honor as an ex officio position. It gives you the opportunity to put someone into that conversation, but they don't have voting privileges, and they don't automatically replace another. If there's a quorum problem, they don't serve towards. They're an alternate member. Alternate members are the
But
folks that.
if a member resigns, for example, we would know this person's commitment to the Conservation
Correct,
Commission.
right. They would be able to come back in and say, what are my qualifications? Well, I've been serving as an associate member for X number of however long.
So we want 1 year or 3 years? I'm fairly flexible on that, but what do others think?
I think it makes sense to do 3 years because they don't need to reauthorize, and if an opening comes up, they're probably going to come before us again anyways.
Right.
I'll
Yep.
go with that.
All right,
Yeah,
so
we would encourage that in this case.
So I will move that Ernest Cook be appointed associate member for a term of 3 years. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. All right, so now we move to Brookline Commission for the Arts, where we have 4 candidates for 3 spots.
I just wanted to let you know that there are 2 members up for reappointment, and both of them are not seeking reappointment. So September 1st, you'll actually have 5 vacancies.
5 vacancies, 4 applicants. All right. In that case, this probably makes this vote very easy. Although I will point out that one of these applicants is under 18 to the extent that that creates.
Don't believe that poses a problem here.
All right, any further discussion? Michael, looks like you were about to say something.
I was interested in having that candidate be an associate member with a 1-year term, given that they're in high school and the process of completing high school. But I guess fundamentally, I still think that that's the right thing to do for that person. But I leave it to the rest of the board.
So I think what we could do is play it down the middle a bit, in that apparently we're going to need to have more applicants come in anyway, because there are 5 vacancies and 4. So we can sort of leave Arav Patel's application pending, depending on what else comes in for that additional vacancy. But it looks like there would at least be support for him to be an associate member. Is that what you're suggesting?
That's what I'm suggesting. But, we could also make him a full member with a one-year term.
I would prefer that.
Full member with 1-year term?
Yeah.
Amanda?
Is this a committee that it would be associate or alternate? Because
I believe I have to look up what the bylaw says on this. I don't know if there's provision for alternate membership here. Let me see.
That actually makes more sense.
Yeah, it does.
yeah, okay, then. But
Yeah.
your solution might get around what I'm thinking.
Yeah, make him a
anyways.
full member, full voting
Member for
member.
a year. All right.
For 1
For a
year.
one-year term, yeah.
Okay, so I will move that we make Arav Patel a member of the Brookline Commission for the Arts to a 1-year term. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. And I move that we provide 3-year terms to Handan Baradaran, Kelly Pope, and Sayaka Minagishi.
Yes.
Bernard? Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
Just for the record, can you tell us who the two current members are who are not seeking reappointment?
Alice Meadows and Tanya Schlatter.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have Advisory Council on Public Health. We have 4 applicants for 2 vacancies. We also have recommendations from Charlie Homer, who's the chair of the Advisory Council on Public Health. He suggested that we go with Dr. Vinay Kadiala and Dr. Jessica Mickelson. Those were sort of the same 2 I was leaning towards. How do others feel?
I was leaning towards Cameron Ashraf Zaida and Jessica Michelson, but if the chair of the council is inclined otherwise, I'm willing to go with it.
I mean, this is somewhere I was leaning towards Vinay and Jessica as well. However, I think if we have the opportunity to add an associate member here, I would like to suggest adding Cameron.
All right, Cameron clearly wanted to get involved, applied to 2 commissions.
Yeah.
And so I think we could do that. All right, so I will move that we appoint Vinay Kadiala and Jessica Michelson to 3-year terms to the Advisory Council on Public Health. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. And I move that we appoint Cameron Ashrafzadeh, associate member, for a term of 3 years. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. So now we go on to naming committee. 1 vacancy, 1 applicant.
And is this is like an associate member right now, right? Or am I mistaking this?
Is he currently serving as an associate?
No, I thought the vacancy was an associate vacancy, but it would be good to confirm.
It's an alternate.
Yeah, it's an alternate member.
All right, so would only get to vote if someone doesn't,
Yes,
this
this is
regular member does not attend the meeting.
Yeah, so the naming committee is a committee of not less than 5, no more than 7 residents, staggered 3-year terms, and it shall include a member of the advisory committee, the Park and Recreation Commission, the Preservation Commission, CDICR, and the school committee, and you can appoint an alternate member. Yes, so this is the alternate member position.
All right, so I move that we appoint Robert Moran, alternate member to the naming committee. Bernard?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Amanda?
Abstain.
Anthony?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. All right, is there anyone who would like to be heard in public comment, as we've now reached the end of our meeting? Anyone online, anyone in the room?
No one online.
All right, seeing none, that concludes the festivities.
Thank you.
Well done.
It's 8 o'clock.
Keep saying.
So Melissa can no longer.
Recording.